You know, when you stack up all of the DCEU's best movies together, they really make quite the squad. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a brand new release, The Suicide Squad. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about The Suicide Squad. This focuses on supervillains Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and a collection of nutty cons at Belle Reve prison who join the super-secret, super-shady Task Force X as they are dropped off at the remote, enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese. This is written and directed by James Gunn in what's only his 5th directorial effort, and I'm sure we all know the story by now. This came about when he was briefly let go from Marvel, and DC got to him pretty quickly, though Marvel brought him back after, so we get the best of both worlds. Gunn gets to make more Guardians of the Galaxy films, which I've enjoyed, but then we also get this. One thing worth noting is that unlike the first Suicide Squad or Justice League, where there was all this interference by Warner Brothers, here, Warner Brothers allowed Gunn to do what he wanted with this, though he still made sure to keep things consistent with the universe. And while I'm still a bit weary with the DCEU, considering there still doesn't necessarily seem to be a grander vision for these characters, I am at least happy that a creator got to create with little to no strings attached. And what I will say is, there's already talks with having Gunn work on more projects for DC, and I'm very happy about that. And I'm very happy they let him do what he wanted here. Honestly, they should just let him be the equivalent of Kevin Feige for DC, but that's a story for another day. Now, if you only know him through the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, while those are very enjoyable and do get to show off his quirkier sense of humor, it's worth noting that Marvel still does have to keep things pretty contained so that their films appeal to a wider audience, considering they've yet to put out an R-rated film. And they still have their restrictions in place to make sure everything does fit into their grander vision. But James Gunn, when left to his own devices, can get really out there. If you've ever seen his first two movies, Slither and Super, those are incredibly dark movies, with a messed up sense of humor, really weird characters, and a lot of gross out moments. And that's pretty much what we got here. This is filled with a ton of graphic violence and some dark, arguably raunchy comedy. Sometimes it can just be straight up goofy in the veins of Guardians, with the inclusion of characters like Polka Dot Man and TDK, more on all of them in a bit, but there are times where Gunn would have us laughing at things that are really uncomfortable, or he'd have situations played for laughs only for there to be a punchline at the end of the scene where it's revealed that what was going on was actually really messed up. Like, I'm not going to get too deep into spoilers, but the best example would be early on, where the team had to rescue one of their fellow team members who was captured, and both Bloodsport and Peacemaker, played respectively by Idris Elba and John Cena, while on the rescue mission, have a contest who can have the most style when killing these captors, and they're taunting each other and making crude gestures at one another as they brutally murder these people, and then when they reach their goal, they come to a realization that puts everything we just saw into a whole new perspective that made me feel really bad for laughing at any of it. Now, many of these scenarios are entertaining, but rarely would I ever necessarily call them straightforward. Not in a way that the movie's inaccessible, but there's always nuance with many of the major plot points, or there's a catch, or there's something morally dubious. But what I really appreciate is, like films such as Guardians of the Galaxy, once again, Gunn manages to take these B and C list tier heroes, some of whom are absolutely out there, and at the end of the day, tell an emotionally compelling story that we can be invested in. And speaking of those characters, I feel like I truly don't know where to begin with them, because there are so many. From the returning characters like Rick Flag, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, and Amanda Waller, to new faces like Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Ratcatcher 2, King Shark, Javelin, Savant, Weasel, and so on. And this is an absolutely stacked cast, with each member of the Suicide Squad being filled with some big name, even down to James Gunn regulars like Michael Rooker and Nathan Fillion even popping up. And I'd say everyone did just about as good of a job as they could have done, even if they only had a limited amount of screen time. And they were all wonderful. But let's talk about some highlights. First thing, Margot Robbie is, as always, a major standout. Of all the casting choices within the DCEU, she was easily one of the best ones, and she lights up the screen providing a lot of irreverent, madcap humor interlaced with graphic violence, and it was a lot of fun. Though it's worth noting that this isn't like Birds of Prey, which is essentially the Harley Quinn movie. We do go stretches of this film without even seeing her. Now, it's not like she's reduced to a glorified cameo or anything. They do give her top billing, and she definitely appears a lot, but compared to Birds of Prey or even the first Suicide Squad, she will take a back seat at times here to let the other characters, most of whom are all appearing for the first time in the DCEU here, some time to shine. Which is important with these team-up movies. That's one thing that's very easy to get wrong, as these movies will sometimes put all the focus on just one or two members of the team, and everyone else is just there. Or they'll have some solid moments, but they're nowhere near as interesting as what essentially becomes the main couple of characters. Here though, anyone who's in the movie for an extended period of time really feels fleshed out. Great backstories, and each of their emotional beats feeling earned. Even King Shark, voiced by Sylvester Stallone, who was another major standout. His character can feel very simplistic, but every moment still felt earned. Now, I will say this as someone who likes Stallone, but isn't exactly a diehard Stallone fan. This was probably one of my favorite roles of his. He is essentially DC's version of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. It required him only speaking a few words every so often, but every time he opened his mouth, even if he only said literally one thing, it was just hilarious. And again, at times, it would be in the context of just really messed up stuff. Like if he's trying to eat someone, or if he's about to eat someone, which is a recurring thing in most of his scenes. So you're laughing at what he's doing, but sometimes you'd feel bad about it depending on the context. We also have Joel Kinnaman returning as Rick Flag, the leader from the last film. And while I didn't mind Flag in the previous film, my god, what an improvement. Last time around, the most in-depth we get with his personality was that he's love-struck with Enchantress, but here he has much more of a personality. He builds a rapport with several members of the team, he can be kind of funny at times, some of the conflicts he gets in hooks you in, and you care for him just as much as some of these weirder and wackier characters, so Gunn really did right by him here. But the heart of the film comes down to two characters, and that's Idris Elba's Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2, played by Daniela Melchior. They both probably had the most detailed backstories. Bloodsport is forced onto the team when Amanda Waller, once again played to perfection by Viola Davis, threatens to send his daughter, played by Storm Reed, to prison if he doesn't join. And Ratcatcher, who's the most trusting and arguably nicest member of the team, tries seeing the good in everyone and also has a pet rat named Sebastian who provides some humorous moments with some nice visual gags. And as we get deeper into her backstory, as well as the bond that the two form throughout the film, it added a really nice personal touch to things. Plus, I will say, this is probably the funniest I've seen Idris Elba, as the way he just reacts to everything throughout this would be amazing. Now, speaking of characters who I wasn't expecting to get really personal, there's also Polka Dot Man, played by David Dastmalchian, a character that could only work in a film helmed by James Gunn, or at the very least, someone with sensibilities that even slightly resemble his. Considering this is a cinematic universe that started with darker films like Dawn of Justice and Man of Steel, the last thing I was expecting was not only getting a character like this, but him working as well as he did here. Obviously, he does provide his fair share of comedic moments, as he's the weirdest member of the group. Like early on, Bloodsport says, "We're all gonna die," and he adds, "I hope so." But like the other characters, we do also get into his backstory a bit, and we find out why he is the way he is, between his personality and his powers. And again, when you get to the heart of it, it is quite compelling. And I liked how Gunn was able to still have fun with these characters, yet really find unique ways to humanize them and make us care for them. And he did so rarely without there being pacing issues or these jarring tonal shifts. The film felt consistent in the way in which it explored both the characters' weirder and more emotional sides. Like there's a great moment when the team has to settle down to wait for someone they're looking for to show up in a nightclub, and because they can't do anything but wait for a few hours, they decide to have a few drinks and enjoy themselves for one brief moment. And this is a very small scene, but I thought this was one of the best sequences in the entire movie. simply because it captured the very spirit of the film and showcased Gunn's masterful storytelling tactics. Like, it's definitely a moment where it allowed the characters and the audience to breathe for just a second, yet it still gets to show off some of their sensibilities with some very quick yet nice exchanges, both when they're just talking and on the dance floor. But it's still a moment that was actually still integral to the plot, so it didn't feel like a waste of time that we were there. They didn't just randomly stop in this club and the film went on an unnecessary tangent. They needed to be there, and we were still waiting a bit anxiously to see how their mission would unfold from there. So I thought the way that this was handled was very nice, as sometimes it can be hard to find that balance between having sequences where you can have characters take a moment and sequences that keep the plot going. But I thought Gunn hit the nail right on the head here. And just about every scene felt integral here, and any issue I had came down to maybe just little nitpicks here and there. Like, maybe one or two moments came off as a bit too overindulgent for me. Like, one cool thing I will say that Gunn does is set these pivotal moments to a song, and it'll be one extended musical sequence. And for the most part, I really like the inventive ways that he did this. Though there were like one or two times where it would be like one right after the other, and I thought maybe it was a bit much. But we're talking like a very minor point in the grand scheme of things, as otherwise it was all really well done. Now, one thing I feel like I haven't heard brought up that much by others is that this definitely felt a bit more satirical in nature compared to the other DC films. Like, Gunn explores morality a lot in here, not just with the characters themselves, but with the nature of their mission, which they're told is supposedly for the greater good. Though the message Gunn is going for never felt quite in your face, as it's not like he stops everything in order to make the statements he wants to make. But this is definitely explored with John Cena's character Peacemaker, who has these very distorted morals. Like, he says early on how he cherishes peace with all his heart, yet he doesn't care who he has to kill to get it. And we see how that's put to the test when these characters are put in these very tough situations, and they find out that not everything they're told about this mission is exactly what it appears to be, without getting into spoilers. And they're given these very tough choices that they never had to think about before. So it's a theme that's revisited all throughout the film. Like, we even see that with Amanda Waller too, also doing what it takes to get this mission accomplished, but she's doing it by threatening members of the team and planting bombs in their heads if the mission goes off course, and we find out that maybe not everything's exactly for the greater good, as we explore how she really feels when it comes to anyone doing the right thing just because it's the right thing to do and not because it has anything to do with the mission. Especially when we come to Project Starfish and the film's ultimate villain, Starro, as we explore its origins. Now, I've heard some people complain about Starro being one of the weaker parts of the movie, and maybe in terms of personality, it's not quite as interesting as other DCEU villains like Black Manta or General Zod, but I do like the way its origins are explored because it allows Gunn to touch upon these themes regarding morals and things done for the greater good while still keeping everything focused on all these different wacky and weird characters, as certain plot details regarding Starro ultimately play into a number of characters' arcs. So I thought the way this was all handled was really well done. And speaking of wacky and weird, I still have to mention the visuals, because those all added to the fun as well. Nearly every scene felt like there was a nice style to it. Like, even a lot of the scene transitions would be some of my favorite things, because if there was a time jump or a location change, the way that would be communicated would be something in the setting would indicate that for us. Like, maybe it'll be trees forming words, or there'll be words forming in the sand on the beach, and so on. But really, there was some sort of visual flair to just about everything, whether it be for comedic relief, with gags for characters like Polka Dot Man and King Shark, or even the action scenes. Like, another of my favorite moments is Harley Quinn having to escape this one building, and she's fighting all these henchmen, and as she hits each one, the blood will be represented by cartoonish looking flowers bursting out, giving it this very dreamlike quality. So I appreciated the craft Gunn put on display in each and every moment, and he managed to add a lot of style to the action, to the humor, and to the story, while still making it feel very substantive as well, which once again really just speaks to his skills as a filmmaker. The Suicide Squad is one of the weirdest and wackiest films in the DCEU, and it's easily one of its best. James Gunn once again takes all these characters, many of whom we never even heard of before, and manages to give them all these really compelling arcs, while still having a lot of fun with their bizarre sensibilities. It's extremely violent, vulgar in nature, and incredibly uncomfortable at times, but it's also never done just for the sake of making audiences uncomfortable, with a lot of substance to back up the style. Filled with a great cast, a layered story, and plenty of visual flair, this is a true standout in the DCEU and in James Gunn's filmography. The Suicide Squad gets a 9.5 out of 10. So now that I've reviewed all the other DCEU movies, stay tuned, as coming soon will be my ranking of all 11 DCEU movies from worst to best. But in the meantime, let me know, did you see The Suicide Squad, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Was this one of your favorite DCEU movies? Was this one of your favorite James Gunn movies? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.